Welcome to the Dog Expert Podcast, the podcast dogs would want you to listen to. Powered by canineprinciples.com, helping passionate dog people go from feeling unsure and overwhelmed to confident, compassionate and science savvy through a rich library of online courses and formal qualifications. Each week on the podcast, we dive deep into the real, raw and rewarding world of dogs. This isn't about obedience. This is about understanding. Because dogs aren't problems to solve. They're free-thinking, sentient beings to connect with. Hello, good evening and welcome to the Dog Expert Podcast. This episode is all about how we're going to make dogs bomb-proof and bulletproof. Now, this is a really important stage of a dog's life that is often overlooked, that we're going to be taking a deep dive into this evening with our fantastic guest, Penny, who is Dr Zoolittle. Amazing name. So Penny is joining us to talk about how we can make the first 12 weeks after bringing a puppy home, so from age 8 weeks to 20 weeks usually, the best we possibly can do, what we can actually do in that time to shape the dog and make them emotionally calm and physically resilient from a biology cellular level for many years to come. Penny is a world-class longevity zoologist. She's a zoo consultant, a cognitive ethologist, and a pet health concierge as well. She really blends cutting-edge longevity science with wild animal strategies to help dogs not just survive, but really thrive well into their senior years. What we're going to be looking at this evening is what Penny calls the bomb-proof and bulletproof concept. So dogs who are really emotionally steady and biologically resilient from the inside out. Let's bring Penny on from backstage so she can introduce herself properly. Hey, Penny.
Hi, Joe.
Hey, thank you for jumping on the podcast with me.
A pleasure, always. Give me any chance to talk about dogs.
So I gave a bit of an intro there about you, but I did actually see a few things on your website that I didn't touch on. There are some really cool things that you've done, not least having your hair done by some amazing animals.
That's the one that always seems to grab people's attention. And you know what? That was probably one of the happiest memories as well. So I was training raccoons in one of the zoos, and it was free contact, and we had great relationship, and they were doing some of their basic training. But it's nice to end on a play session, a free play. And so I would then sit down and just allow them to engage how they would like to do so. And what they wanted to do was do my hair. So I had 2 raccoons, one on either shoulder, from behind me, stroking their fingers through and mushing it up, and wetting their hands the way they do. And so there it was. That was my raccoon hair.
Wow, that's fantastic. And what a cool choice. Of all the things that they could have chosen to do, that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to be with you and do your hair. How wonderful. So I guess a really good place for us to start is maybe around how the bomb-proof, bulletproof concept came about in the first place.
Well, that's an easy one, actually, because it's the solution to the problem that I see over and over and over and over again. Now, I started out as a welfare zoologist doing improving animal welfare in captivity. So really that comes down to what are the humans in that equation deciding on behalf of the animal, because that's effectively the result is the care that they have, and therefore the quality of life that they have, therefore their welfare. So that's where I started, and then I've expanded that out to also include the body, because that's a huge part of welfare, is how well or sick you are, how free you are in your movement, how engaged you are with the world. And so I would just see consistently in consultations and in working with the zoos, behavior problem, behavior problem, behavior problem, physical problem, physical problem, physical problem, right? And so that sounds like normal. That sounds like, oh, you know, of course, you know, that's the same as everybody. And it is. But if you want to do something about that rather than just fight fires all the time and just wait for the next bad thing to happen and then fix that, and then wait for the next one to happen and then fix that, and constantly be chasing your tail and constantly having welfare going like this, you could actually say, well, hang on, what's driving the body to go out of system? What's driving behavior to become abnormal? Let's fix that. And then downstream doesn't happen anymore. So the question was, well, what fixes that? And when do you need to fix that? And do you need to do it once or 100 times? You know, so I dug into those questions, but it was really just a case of, listen, I care so much about the quality of life that that animal has with you, and that determines the relationship that you have with your pet. So if it's compromised because the behavior is off, because you're always stressing about health, because there's vomit everywhere, because everyone's getting bitten, or right, that's not a joyful, relaxed, cool, loving relationship. That's not the dog you dreamed of, right? This is now a challenge. So what if we could give you the dog you ordered, kind of thing, right? And then you know what to do to have that perfect as it can get scenario for the rest of their life. So that was the solution.
Amazing. And I think for people listening in, maybe if we look a bit about defining what a bomb-proof puppy, the kind of emotional foundations, and then moving on to what the bulletproof puppy, the physical resilience side of things, what that actually looks like. So how would you define a bomb-proof dog?
This is a word I actually stole from the zoo, because we would say, oh, this, you know, when you're going into the zoo, like when new zookeeper coming in or whatever, who's who in the zoo and what's going on, right? It's like, this one's bomb-proof. Like, you can just throw anything at this one and they're absolutely fine, but just watch your fingers with that one or whatever. So this word kind of became part of my language. So the way I describe it with respect to dogs is confidence is probably the biggest part of it. It's confidence, and that doesn't mean cocky and aggressive. That just means confident. That means secure and safe in their own skin, aware of who they are and what's expected of them, knowing how to engage in this human world, which is a foreign culture to them, being biddable. Someone can ask you to do something, right? Please sit down over here. And the dog says, I know exactly what to do with that request. I know what it is. I know what I'm expected to do, right? So there's the biddable thing. There's the polite manners. How do I greet other people? How do I greet other dogs? What's expected of me in this scenario so that everyone's happy? No one's hackles go up. Nobody gets yelled at. Then there's I guess, really confident and well-behaved is the best way of summing it up.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we can lay those emotional foundations so that the puppy grows into a calm, confident, secure dog, because they've been given agency and positive social experiences, and they've got that emotional safety, that's going to mean that some of the more common behavioral issues that we see, like separation anxiety, reactivity, fear responses, they're going to be minimized because they've got those firm foundations rooted in emotional safety.
Correct.
And then if we look at the bulletproof side of things, the physical resilience, now this really fascinates me, from that cellular strength for kind of long-term health. As you know, I'm signed up to learn from you, because this is like right on my geek level. So if we're looking at like gut health and immune system development and all the nervous system regulation, is that what you're talking about when you're talking about a bulletproof puppy?
So bulletproof, yes and no. So yes, bulletproof is, imagine you're going into a war zone, whether it's you or a dog, right? You're going to have some body armor. You're going to have a visor, probably a helmet. You're going to have some padding in various places, because you're going in and there could be a stray bullet somewhere. There could be some sheet metal that flies up in the wind. Like, a war zone is a dangerous place. And we go in not just in our swimsuit going, oh, it's fine, you know. So that's the concept. We can give that level of protection to our pets when we address the basic pillars of their lifestyle. Or conversely, what happens is the majority of dogs are actually waltzing through that war zone in their proverbial swimsuit. They're vulnerable to anything and everything that comes their way because they haven't been set up biologically at the beginning. And there's a number of ways where that can fall apart, not the least of which is have you been cesarean sectioned or have you been vaginally birthed, right? That's number one. Two, did you get your colostrum from mum on the first couple of days, right? Without those things. So it already happens. There's already just some story right at the beginning, long before the 8 weeks when you're going to bring puppy home. But when it's you now in the driver's seat, you have so much control over what is their biology going to do. And we being the proverbial pet parent or a zookeeper or a vet, like we as the humans around the animal have collectively around about 90% control over the health destiny of our animals, which is to say that the genetics play a component, but only about 10%. And it varies a little bit species to species. And in fact, dogs are slightly more genetically likely because they're so bred and inbred, really, sometimes in the creation of all these different breeds. So the most doctored around with species on the planet, right? There's more morphology changes within dog than there is in any other animal. So they're a little bit higher. So we say safely go 10% with a dog. It's usually about 7 for everyone else. So that means there's a lot on the table, right? You've got 90% control over whether they catch this, get this, develop that, have those symptoms or not. So knowing that as a pet parent, it suddenly changes the ballgame because it's not a dice roll, you know, oh, I got a lucky one or I didn't get a lucky one, or it's really, you're in the driver's seat. And if you want your dog to be safe, healthy, protected, and live a long time, they actually all go together, right? You get one, you kind of get all four at the same time. So why not do what it takes to get one of them, and then both of you are going to enjoy that for as long as possible. So bulletproof is really talking about having that those shields up kind of thing, because that's your immune system, right? That is forward facing, because no doctor, no vet, no longevity zoologist, no pet parent, no wonder drug, no, holistic therapy, what doesn't matter. Nothing's going to heal your dog and protect your dog. Nothing except their immune system. And if we neglect that and not have the shields up, then of course they're going to get infectious diseases. Of course they're going to acquire injury. Of course their bone plates aren't going to set properly. Of course they're going to have mental health problems, gut dysbiosis, weak joints, allergies, the whole thing. And that's what we see over and over and over and over in the vet clinics around the world. There's the same, top 10 issues that come through all the time. And the root cause every single time is because those 7 pillars of longevity lifestyle that wrap around a dog that you're in control of haven't been set up to be what a dog needs. It's been set up to be what marketing told you, a company, a vet, what's convenient for you, right? Valid, but if you're prioritizing welfare as the number one priority, it's not good enough. So if your welfare is number one, then you've got to look at those decisions and say, well, of course I'm going to feed my dog, right? Yeah, well, no one's debating that. Whether you feed over here or over here, you're feeding your dog. But are you feeding a raw species appropriate diet? Are you making sure the daily essential nutrients are there and that you've got purified water? Or are you feeding out of the tap with all the junk that's in tap water and a highly processed diet that involves at least 50% carbohydrate, which they don't need, right? I mean, it's a pretty stark difference when you lay out a few dot points. But this will set them up for doom and gloom. This will set them up for 20 plus years of health. So it's really straightforward.
It's amazing. When you lay it out like that, it's just no brainer. Yet so many pet parents, and myself included in the past, I'm not saying, but
we all learn.
The same. Because we live and we learn, and I think it's really important that there's no shame on people who don't know any different, because just by watching this, you're educating yourself and your dog will live longer as a result. So how, with the bomb-proof, bulletproof approach, between 8 to 20 weeks, that window, that kind of golden window for the brain, the body, the behavior, what's actually happening developmentally during that time?
Great question. So there's sort of those four phases, if you like. You've got the neonatal, you know, we're really a baby. Then we have the juvenile window. Then we have the adolescent window, and then we have the adult window. And the body and the brain are both doing different things in each of those four zones. And it's not just one thing, but there's a continuum where the brain will go from here to here in that period of time. And then the next epoch, it's going to be doing something different, but also still progressing. So, I mean, that all makes sense. So let's look at it from a couple of those skills point of view. At around about 12 weeks to around about 24, 26 weeks. So that's a big chunk of the time that we've just been sort of looking at. You've got the juvenile period. But prior to that, you have this young baby whose brain is like a sponge and whose body is growing like a weed. And that has to be catered for. And over time, that will slow down, right? But it's not, and it depends on the breed themselves as to when they reach that threshold of maturity or adulthood. And the way I look at it as a zoologist is probably a little bit different from the way most people would approach it. Because I say there's 4 tiers to maturity. And they happen at different points. So it's the point at which all 4 of those are now in existence that I say now your dog is an adult. Prior to that, they're a sub-adult or they're in adolescence or wherever. So if they've got 3 out of the 4 or 2 or whatever, then they're on, they're tracking, but they're not an adult yet. So sexual maturity tends to be the one that happens first, right? And so sexually mature means now you can go and breed. Right, but does that make you an adult? No, it really does not. And you just look at any 15-year-old and human and say, So, I mean, it makes sense. There's a logical pathway that we can track with that. So there's sexual maturity, there's physical maturity. Like, when does the body stop growing? When has it reached full flesh out? And then there's emotional, and then there is cognitive. So those are the 4 things. And so the brain's going to get to a point where it's like, okay, now I've acquired the maximum amount of cognition development that I can as a domestic species. So quick side note, the process of domestication is actually a retardation of brain development to prevent an animal from reaching full wild adulthood. Right. That's why domestic animals have a dependency flavor and that willingness to interact, bond, and connect with the human, because we're taking over the role of protector, parent, leader, decision maker, right? Depending on their particular species social structuring, okay? They don't really reach independence. Now, they can become feral, so be domesticated, but change their behavior and become feral, but they don't become wild because they literally physically cannot become wild because their brain can't develop that last percentage from wherever they stopped in domestication to a full wild brain. Mm-hmm. So whereas we take dogs through their age brackets, they're going to stop at various points on that cognitive maturity pathway depending on their breed. So we look at what's the benchmark then. So we use the wolf, obviously, because that's the dog ancestor. And we say, right, that's what 10 out of 10 looks like, or that's what 100% look, whatever you want to measure, right? But that's what the model is for full wild maturity for the dog model. So if you're a husky, you can probably do about 95% of a wolf's behavioral repertoire. There's a little fraction there that the wolves have an edge on that they can do that a husky can't. But a husky is essentially the next thing. They're going to get the most cognitive development of any breed. And we see that because they've got the ability to do the long stare. They don't bark, they howl, they communicate the way an adult. Barking is baby talk. Right? That's barking. That's what that is in dog world, right? Howling and silence and body language is full adult communication, and it's really only the husky that gets up there. So everyone else, every breed is going to be somewhere on that continuum, down to the ones that are, the most dependent, needy, and have a lot more of those neonatal features. So the really big eyes in proportion to skull, right? You look at a child, a human baby, right? And you see the eyes are, and the big head compared to the body, and very long floppy ears, because adult ears are pointy triangles. Right? And so if your dog's got pointy triangles, they're much closer to being a wolf. They've got further to go on their cognitive development than a floppy-eared dog. A floppy-eared dog is going to be younger cognitively. Anyway, we're getting in the weeds there, but it was just the getting to maturity looks different for every dog, and we can never expect our dog to get to the point of having the common sense of a wolf, because they can't. They literally can't. So that's why it's so important for us to lead them in the decisions of what to eat, when to eat, where to go, how to stay clean, all these kind of lifestyle. I call them the 7 pillars of animal longevity. But in a pack, the animals would have, in the wild, they would have all reached that stage sooner or later, and know how to work cooperatively to support each other to keep fulfilling those things all the time. And that comes innately because they're all wolf, right? But we have to learn that as a human, because we do it our way, which is human, not dog way, which is what they need.
So when they're in the wild and they're that family unit, and their brains are developed in a way that they're able to survive in that situation, compared to our domestic dogs who are captives and they're unable to choose, even to scratch their own bottoms sometimes. They're not able to choose what they're eating. They're not able to choose where they're going to roam and what they're going to, what time they're going to wake up, or any of the decisions around their lives. We're controlling them all. It's really important that we're introducing choice into their everyday environment. But what we're doing with the bulletproof, bomb-proof, bulletproof concept is really making sure that we're providing them with choices, but they're all positive choices that are going to set them up for that longevity, going to minimize any behavioral challenges after the 12-month mark, make sure that they've got the immune system support from the inside out that they need. What practical tips, if there was a pet parent watching this, would you recommend that they take? I know that's probably how long is a piece of string.
So when I teach this with a client, we go through to go from adopted puppy to bomb-proof and bulletproof dog, right? And that we can do that for either the juvenile period only, or juvenile and adolescent, and once they get that out, they're now equipped. Right, so you don't have to do 18 months worth or 12 months worth. You can stick with the 12 weeks, and it's a game changer. But what I would typically do then is take people through, especially in the early stages, the week by week. What is the speed of change in development and growth is lightning. So you have to be looking for what do I introduce this week? It's really a full-time job from week 8 to week 20, because the needs of that dog are high, sky high, and it doesn't need to take you all day to do it, but because they're little, they're young, it's on quick repeat, right? So they've got a bladder control for 30 minutes, so you're going to be popping in and out and popping in and out and popping in and out a lot, or going to the puppy pads, or what, unless you've done the training so it's not like you can just set and forget and do it one time and then come back and do it tomorrow, because they're on a quick cycle as they're young. So it's intensive in the early stages. So week by week there's quick changes, and knowing how to be prepared for what's coming next and set yourself and your dog up for success by being ready is a huge part of it. Because if it's going to take you a week to catch up for where you were last week, you're now 2 weeks behind. Do you know what I mean? Like, it goes fast. So that's one layer of things that I do. And then also there are what I call the 6 essential skills and the 12 key decisions. And so you want to be very mindful of, there are 6 skills that are imperative right? Not just optional extras, but imperative for a dog to acquire in this time frame. Because there's these things called the critical windows. Probably most people have heard of that now, right? So there's a critical learning development window where the brain is like a sponge. It's completely plastic. Anything that goes in is instantly learned and absorbed and retained, and it's just peak learning moment. There comes a time when that comes down. It comes down like, you know, like a ton of bricks. Boof, that window is shut. That doesn't mean they can never learn again, right? The old dog, you can't teach an old dog new tricks kind of thing, whatever, right? That's a fallacy. But what happens now is the brain is going to be resistant. It's because that's a safety mechanism for survival, to be suspicious of something new. Before, we were like, everything's fine. Mum and daddy can look after me. I can just learn everything. There's the only thing in the world is food and play and sleep. So our brain is very receptive. There's no filter, right? And then we get older and it's like, hang on a minute, right? So now if you want to train, you can absolutely train. The dog is begging to be trained. They want to be stimulated. They want to learn. They're going to learn whether you teach them or not, right? They're learning through observation. They're learning through pattern and behavior, right? But are they learning what you want them to learn, right? And do you have that on a voice command, right, to elicit that behavior, which is a blessing for your dog, because what they don't want is insecurity and confusion. So if I don't know what you want from me, right? And you're going there, I just wish you would do this thing, right? So that's what we want to avoid. So we go through these 6 basic life skills that set the dog up for success in living in a human world. Imagine you're an exchange student to, I don't know, rural China, right? Do you know what the etiquette is? Do you know what the language is? Can you fit into a family environment and never put a toe out of line in terms of your manners, and have you offended somebody, and have you got all your needs met? I bet you can't. Right? So if you were going to do that, you would have coaching, you'd have language classes, you'd have etiquette school, you would have practice runs, you do role play, and you would figure it out. And then by the time you were going to China and living in the rural countryside, you'd be equipped. And you go, your nervous system will be back down in the parasympathetic, and you just be loving life, taking lots of pictures, right? But when you are like, holy heck, I have no idea. Like, I don't even know if I'm going to get mugged down this way here, or I'm going to fall off a bridge going, like, your autonomic nervous system's going through the roof. And can you really learn and concentrate and do great things in that moment? No, of course you can't, right? You're in resistance. So it's a case of, let's give them the basic skills they need to live in a human culture successfully, confidently, which results in happily, right? And then look at the 12 decisions that we're making in that early time frame of their life, and make them based on the best possible welfare requirements that fit in with maybe your ethic or your budget or your location in the world, right? So it's not prescriptive, but it's things to be thinking about, rather than just following what an ad on TV told you to do, or some outdated science, or from the human perspective. So long answer, are there tips? Yes, there's bazillions of them, which is why I can't go and list them all off, but we can dive into one or two if you want to do them more. Happy to do that, but I give you a framework, because then it will make sense. So we're going to say 12 decisions, 6 life skills, 7 pillars of animal longevity, and we're going to go week by week, layering each of those things. It will all make sense. It sounds complicated. It's really not. It's actually probably easier for the pet parent with this than it is to be, I don't know what I'm doing, and why is the dog eating all the socks, and why is there still pee in the bathroom, and why are they like that place? Nobody likes being in that place. So having a little framework makes it so much easier for everyone.
Absolutely. And also the anxieties that you feel as a new pet parent to a little puppy, the pressure, the responsibility that you've got to do your best by this puppy, I can't say the word, surrounded by conflicting advice online, not knowing who to believe, what to believe, and you've got well-meaning friends and family giving you every single experience that they've ever had with a puppy. And then you've got the vets, and then you've got behaviorists and not knowing which ones are good, which ones are not good. It really is a time of confusion for many a pet parent. So to have an ethical framework that they can follow will keep their heart rates down, which will have a positive effect on the puppy as well. One thing that I see a lot with new puppies in a home is it is flooding and overexposure and overstimulation. If I think it's really important to stress to anyone listening that each dog is so individual. They've got their own individual needs, their own individual experiences, like you said, in that first 8 weeks, and their own requirements. So although there are key foundation points and key areas that you'll be able to focus on, it almost doesn't matter how the puppy's behaving, it's how you're reacting or acting that is really important to make sure that that puppy gets consistency across the board. So whether that's consistency with outstanding nutrition that's specific for their age, or whether it's consistency with your cues, your body language. Have you got any top tips for people around how they can maintain the way that they're behaving and the way that they're acting to keep their heart rates down?
Remember why you got a puppy in the first place? To love and have fun and share your life together. Like, really, I mean, anytime we feel an emotion, that is expressed chemically on our skin. Okay, so we look at dogs and we say, oh, it's like they know this is a bad person or a good person. They all seem to know that you're in a good mood or a bad mood, you know, right? And that's true because they're smelling these emotions that we are feeling, right? That if we cry happy tears, right, the chemistry is very different from if we're crying heartbreak tears. Like, you can actually chemically look at the signature and say, I don't know, you know, like, this was the happy person, this was, right? So the chemistry is coming out of our body and it layers up on our skin. So our dogs are able to basically have a scent blueprint map of what our day has been. And if we're still carrying the stress on the top layer, the most recent one, like, the, you know, where are we now? What are we admitting at this moment? That they'll mimic that. They'll mimic that because they're a social species and they want to fit in. So when you're like, your dog's going to be like, holy heck, okay, what's the threat? We're clearly under attack. I don't understand what's going on. I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. So I'm just going to stress out as well. And, you know, so it's not conducive for anybody. So if you're finding it difficult, your patience is stretched, you're stressed out, go and do something that you love. Walk away. Because you're removing that fragrance from the room by you leaving the room. You're diminishing the charge in the atmosphere. You can go and do something that's pleasurable for you, which will set you up for success to then walk back in and then say, oh my gosh, you are so cute. I forgot you were cute 10 minutes ago when I was mad at you, but look at you now. Let's have a little cuddle. Let's do this. And you rebond and you do that, and then you can pick up. It's I mean, we say this to zoo trainers all the time, because if you're in a stressful situation and a tiger's not cooperating and you're feeling like that, you do not want to face off with a tiger, right? And the tiger doesn't want you to face off with them either. People get hurt so controlling your emotions as a trainer is critically important, because they do transmit and they open the door wide for big mistakes that can often be really hard to mend. There's a period in the dog's life from around 7 to 14 weeks, or is it after that? 7 to 14 weeks, you have the peak desensitization time. So desensitization is, let me show you stimuli, but show you that it's safe, so you don't have to be afraid of it. So you're not going to develop a firework phobia. You're not going to develop a hatred of the postman. You're not going to develop all of those things, okay? So, but the acquisition of fear starts to come in the second half of that time frame. So before then, there, as I said to you, there is no fear. It's like, oh, I'm just a baby. Like everyone will protect me. There's nothing to be afraid of. When you get a little bit older, then it's like there was a bad experience. Someone trod on your tail by mistake. You're going to remember that now. And now you've got a tail, not a tail phobia, but you're like super hyper vigilant of people walking around you because you had your tail squished. And now that becomes an acquired learned behavior that makes for an edgy, jumpy, switchy dog, right? So we can help them unlearn that. But these are the experiences that we want to avoid because they can start to be retained and then set the scene for a whole cascade of patterns. Now, accidents will happen, a tail will occasionally get trodden on, right? So, or whatever it is, a car will backfire that you had no control over and everyone's hit the ceiling. So, but it's knowing, okay, that was actually seemed like a super minor thing for me to have a car backfire in the street. But look at the dogs, right? And two of them have peed on the floor in a hut, So it's like, okay, as an intelligent pet parent, I'm now going to note that and say, that was a big deal for them. This is the age bracket that they're in. Therefore, this could be a problem. It's time to fix it right now. And so you go grab some toys and some treats and you do a little play session and you calm everybody down. If you've got a grounding mat or if you've got a PM, like a PEMF device or something that is going to help reset the autonomic nervous system to parasympathetic, then you can use the. So it's a case of knowing what you can do and what you have on hand to do. And you only need 5-10 minutes. This is not like 4 hours now of hard work, but doing the 10 minutes right then and there will be game changer for a dog that doesn't develop, like walking phobias, like people walking around them phobia.
Oh, there's so much I want to talk to you about. Such a juicy topic. So one thing that we touched on when we were backstage was about how, although we're talking about a 12-week window, every dog is different and every dog will have their own individual timeline. So can we talk a little bit around that, please?
Yes. So there is a breed specificity thing to that, but I wouldn't ever say it's black and white. It's just if you've selected a particular, it's different if you're going to the shelter and adopting someone that's a bit all mixed up because, the rules just don't always apply. But there's a conceptual thing. And hopefully if you have chosen a specific breed, you've done a little bit of research into why you chose that breed and what they require. And so if you've got a dog that is more on the baby scale and going to stay on the baby scale for life, to set your expectations differently than if you've got an Alsatian or a Husky, for example. Okay. But then it's a case of knowing your individual baby, like who is it in front of you, not just what is it, it's a dog or it's a pug or whatever, but like who are they? And hopefully if you were going with a breeder, you've spent some time bonding in advance and you've sort of selected who you want based on character traits or what, so, but even if you haven't, you've got the starting point to go, okay, well, let's find out what you love. What do you love? So you can do preference testing, and that doesn't have to sound anything more complicated than say, okay, I have toy A and toy B. I'm going to put them both down on the floor. Which one do you want? That's a preference test. It's just short and simple, right? But then if you did that again and say, oh, so this was the winner and that one wasn't, then we get another toy and we do it again and go, which one is it now? And you can discriminate through and have almost a hierarchy of toys. And if that tends to happen on repeat, then you're like, okay, well, clearly, Mr. Gingerlegs is the favorite toy. Right, and I don't know, elephant is least favorite. I'm just making this up. But you can preference test and find that out, and so then your individual. So, but you can also discover how fast do they learn, and the answer to how fast do they learn is usually faster than you think it is. Usually faster than you think, because here's the thing: in the wild, again, and this stays true even in a domestic brain. Okay, in the wild, all day, every day is constant stimulation. Constant stimulation. The senses are being fired upon all the time. The brain is filtering most of that out and holding on to what's relevant. With what's relevant, they then make a decision, and that's what you see, because that's behavior. Okay, so there's a whole behavioral cascade that goes through, and they're doing that 24/7. Obviously, not when they're sleeping, but like that is on. If they're awake, that's on. nature doesn't stand still. It's not static. It doesn't follow the same pattern every day. We have seasonal changes. We have light and day changes. We have floods and weather changes. We have like animals coming in and out of your territory changes. We have social conflict changes. We have human invasion change. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff. So an animal is doing that all the time. When they come into our world, they're equipped to do that. And yet they live in an environment that doesn't change. The temperature control, light control, timing control, no other animals are encroaching on you. It's like, some random, fox isn't just walking through the living room, right? So it's very, very bland. It's very static. It's very boring. So that brain is sitting there going, come on, come on, come on, give me something, right? Yeah. And this is why we get recreational barkers, recreational chewers, recreational, over grooming, right? We've got the problem now. You're bald, right? Well, why did you do that? Well, because for the dog, from their value system point of view, something is better than nothing. Like nobody likes a nothing. Just ask a human. An example is grief, right? We lose someone in our life. There's now a hole, right? That hole really hurts. If we are able to fill that hole even a little bit with another person that we love, or let's say we change, but you can replace to some extent, right? You have a breakup and you cut your hair, right? Or you have a breakup and you join a sports club, or these kinds. You're filling a void, because void is super painful. So in the absence of that stimulation having somewhere to go, it will create something. Barking, chewing, licking. And these are all adaptive coping mechanism behaviors that the dog doesn't want to do, but will do when he's forced to, because the stimulation isn't there. So training is essential. Like it's as important as feeding, right? And training doesn't have to be 4 hours a day. It's 5-minute sessions twice a day, 3 times a day. Like, I mean, and why did you get a dog? Didn't you want to hang out with them and have fun? Like, wouldn't, So it really shouldn't be an obstacle for people to do training. And so training's super easy, but now you've got something cognitive to attach to. And so you see a diminishment in the undesirable behaviors and an improvement in the desirables. Well, isn't that the outcome you wanted? And wasn't it fun in the middle? So it's like, so knowing your baby and how fast they learn and what their needs are and where are they likely to get to on that development scale. If you're expecting your Cavalier King Charles Spaniel to be like a husky, I'm sorry, you need to go back to school, right? Reset your expectations. Right, but they're relying on you to know who they are and to love them anyway, and that's just do that. Just know who they are and love them.
Yeah, it's a bit like adopting a child, a young child, and expecting them just to slot into your daily life, in your daily routine, and
right.
Without any sort of understanding of them as a person, as an individual personality who's got their own thoughts and ideas and likes and dislikes. Every time I keep having this thought that comes into my head and I'm like, oh, I need to ask about that, and it keeps going again. You touched on them. A puppy isn't just like, you can have a 5-minute training session, you can have a 10-minute training session, but that's not the only time they're learning. And that's something I really want to stress, is that they're absorbing, they're learning all the time. Every time they are awake, they're learning something. When they're asleep, they're learning that they're safe enough to get remedial sleep, and that sleep's not being disturbed and no one's encroaching on them while they're getting that sleep. And while they're awake, they are learning every single second of their waking day. So although in a human's head it might be, I'm going to train my dog now, that's not the case for the dog. The dog is learning every waking second of every waking day. And when we're talking about training sessions as small, they just need to be really short, really sweet, always ending on a positive. But what we want to also be careful of is that the dog's bones are still soft, their body's not formed yet, it's still growing, and we want to make sure that we're not getting them to jump over things and do stuff that's going to create an impact that's going to affect their physiology. Can we talk a little bit around what appropriate training would be? And I know we're going to run short of time, so we'll be quick, but can we talk a little bit around what you would see as appropriate training for those short sessions?
Yeah, definitely. So to your point with the development of the bones, let's just touch that very quickly. That's what would be addressed in that week by week by week thing. So it's knowing that until they get to this age point, their bones are going to be unable to cope confidently, successfully with that level of strain. So it's like keep play looking like this until then, keep rough housing looking like this until then, keep frisbee work, so we go through those things as well. But just remind me your question, because I just now went off on this.
I love that you think I'll remember. Let's move to a different one.
But I had a whole answer as well. I just forgot what it is.
I think it was around what appropriate training sessions.
Appropriate training, yes. So babies, they're babies. You really don't want until they're over the 3-month mark, and probably 4-month mark. You don't want training sessions to be any more than 5 minutes. They just don't have the capacity to concentrate for that period of time. And you're going to run into a lack of success, which means it's going to be a downer for them and it's going to be frustrating for you. So just keep those really short and sweet. We want to be when they're still with mum in that sort of from the sort of 4 to 8 week window there. What they're really learning is social skills with siblings, how to dog. They're kind of learning how to dog. What does it mean to be a dog? What does it mean when someone bites me? What do I do with the tail? Like, how do I like they're doing all that. So socialization and very, very gentle handling from people at that point in time, so that they can become accustomed to these things called hands that come down and, grab on you and do stuff, right? So, but then when they get older, training wants to shift. You'll go through then a peak socialization thing. And at that point in time, it's a really good idea to have a training plan, because you've got a certain amount of time to do that before that window comes down, like we talked about, but you've got a fairly large objective list to get through. So I like to give people a checklist and see, can you hit 10 of these a week or 50 of these a week, or, I'm slightly exaggerating, but the concept is we want to socialize them to be comfortable with every kind of person. So that means a baby, that means a screaming baby, that means a toddler, that means a small child, that means an adolescent teenager, that means someone who's smoking, that means an adult, that means a woman, that means a man wearing a hat, that means a man with a beard, that means a man with like a walking stick, that means a wheelchair, that means someone who's laughing loudly. Like, really, it's not like one human will desensitize your dog to what humans are, because that doesn't work like that. Dogs are very compartmentalized in their thinking, and they're reading patterns. So the female pattern looks different from male pattern, so they don't generalize. It's kept out very separate. And so the more people that they can be introduced to in the socialization side. So this is training, right? We're training them to be comfortable with people. So training session doesn't have to look like you've got a checklist of tasks and they have to do it on repeat. Training is, let me introduce you to grandpa with his walking stick and his beard, so that you are comfortable with grandpa and you don't develop a phobia of men with beards. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So socialization is 5 minutes of play with grandpa and 5 minutes of play with baby and 5 minutes of play with the kids down the street and 5 minutes of play. Like, it's that simple. And then we move from socialization into desensitization. So this is now your stimuli, your in external environment, lawnmowers, cars, planes, bikes, the postman, the milkman, the TV, driving in the car, cats, other animals, going to the beach, going to the park, going to the vet, going to the train station, getting on a train, whatever your life looks like, because everyone's lifestyle is different. Everyone lives in different location. Are you rural? Are you urban? All these things, right? So whatever your lifestyle, whatever that looks like, whether you go public transport or you get in the car, all of those things. That's what needs to be trained next. That desensitization, that getting on the train is safe. It might be weird, right? But getting on the train is safe. And the noise of the plane going overhead is safe. The noise of my hairdryer going is safe. Someone yelling on the TV is make believe it's safe, even though the dog's hearing the emotion in that voice. You can be there giving them a snuggle at the same time, right? But we have to, it's just being mindful of what. So training is exposure to all those things in a way that sets the dog up for success rather than acquiring that.
Yeah.
Because we don't want them carrying that.
No,
So
and
training,
we're doing everything in a way that's consent based, and we're watching the dog's body language and making sure that when the dog gets to a point where they are just sort of feeling a little bit of pressure, low pressure, we are making the decision to retreat from that so that they don't feel forced or backed into a situation, but we're giving them the opportunities to be curious safely. And expose them to these things safely using positive reinforcement and whatever is the key motivator for the dog. There's no kind of we're not picking them up and dropping them into a river and seeing if they can swim to expose them to to something like that. Everything is done in a way, like when you're saying about Grandpa, for example, he's got his stuff, but we're letting the dog choose to interact. We're not saying, Grandpa, hey, bring your walking stick over and approach the dog. We're offering the dog the opportunity, the puppy the opportunity to engage with Grandpa and to be invited into Grandpa's space with the choice to take the flight option available to them if they want.
Yeah.
Oh, Penny, we could talk all night.
Really? Yeah. I mean, should we go till midnight then? Is that all right?
Okay, yeah, well, we did say we'd get some midnight snacks if we were still going, didn't we? So if you want to see Penny back on the Dog Expert podcast, I think you might let us know, pop us a message. I think Penny should join us every week. What do you think? And everyone should be more Penny, basically.
Well, maybe people know a few things, that's all. Just a few things that I can share.
Oh, fantastic. Really, really grateful to you for jumping on with us this evening. If people want to find out more about you and your work, how can they find out more and get in touch?
So drzoolittle.co is where you'll find some information. The website is really just an intro into me, because most of the work that I do is going to be through other sites, but that's a good starting point, and you could reach out to me there. But I have Forever Young, which is an amazing membership program for people to have access to a longevity library of resources. And there's no pressure to learn, there's no agenda to meet, there's no high price ticket or any of it. It's completely accessible. But it means that if you have questions about training, you can just jump into the longevity library and take a look at the videos that are about training, or that are about desensitization, or about critical windows, or about raw feeding, or whatever it is. And so this is a constantly evolving resource section, and there's all kinds of other bits that go along with that. But the main, these are the guides and protocols and the supplements that I would recommend people use, and it's just to take all the stress out of it for you. So that's membership, and that's really the most significant way that you can, engage with all of this material. So I encourage people to take a look at that, and we can put the link on the show notes here, I think, probably.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. And I can see that we've still got questions coming in. We are out of time. So we will come back to you in the chat and reply to your messages on YouTube and Facebook. I can see that we've got some messages coming in there. So please do keep the questions coming in the comments, and we will come back to you and make sure that you have answers to them. Thanks once again to Penny for joining us. If you haven't already subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do. It's youtube.com/@ thedogexpertpodcast.com. We are powered by canineprinciples.com. Check out their courses over on the website. Everything from free loose lead walking course through to formal degree level 6 Ofqual qualifications. And we will see you again live tomorrow for the next episode of the Dog Expert podcast. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks, everyone. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Dog Expert podcast, the podcast dogs would want you to listen to. If you've enjoyed this episode, do come and let us know in our free Facebook group for dog lovers everywhere, Ethical Dog Training with Canine Principles. That way we can make more content like this that you'll love. We would love for you to leave a review on here and hit subscribe so that you never miss an episode.